When the storm clouds gather in your life, and everything you thought was certain begins to crumble, there is a voice deep within that whispers, "This is not the end. This is the call." Every soul, at some point, descends into what ancient wisdom calls the dark night. A place of confusion, pain, loss, silence. But in that silence, if you dare to listen, you begin to hear the truth of who you are. Hard times do not destroy us, they reveal us, and so today, I will share 10 things you must do when times get tough. But let us begin with the first 5, the core steps that will either break you down or build you anew. Every morning, as light breaks over the horizon, we are offered a silent invitation to meet ourselves as we truly are. But most of us decline. We reach for noise, for distraction, for the easy comfort of routine. We flood the silence with movement, with phones, with thoughts borrowed from others. Why? Because deep down, there is a part of us that knows, if we pause, if we stand still long enough, we will be forced to face something we've long buried. Chaos is not always loud. Sometimes, it is quiet. A subtle ache in the chest. A lingering question that never fully fades. The sense that something is off, even if we can't name it. And because we fear the uncertainty of that feeling, we run. We busy ourselves, overwork, entertain, scroll endlessly through curated lives that are not our own. But whatever we run from does not disappear. It simply waits. It waits in our relationships, in our decisions, in the unease we carry into each morning. It seeps into our words, our posture, our breath. You cannot outrun the self. The shadow you ignore in waking hours will visit you in your dreams. There is a quiet truth we must begin to accept. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is the doorway. Pain, fear, confusion, they are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are signals that something within you is trying to break through. Not to destroy you, but to awaken you. Imagine a man who worked faithfully for 2 decades, pouring his identity into a career. One day, the job is gone, and with it, a part of his sense of worth. He tells everyone he's fine, he jokes, he scrolls. But behind his eyes is a storm. One morning, he catches his reflection and says out loud, "I don't know who I am without that job." That sentence, simple and raw, is the beginning of his healing. He has stopped fleeing. He has turned toward the chaos and said, "I see you." Transformation begins not when we fix things, but when we finally face them. When we name our pain, we strip it of its power. We bring it into the light, where it can no longer distort our thoughts in secret. Facing the chaos is not about solving it all at once. It is about having the courage to stand in its presence without turning away. To fix your morning mindset, begin here. Sit with your discomfort. Don't fight it. Observe it. Ask what it wants. To teach you, the human spirit is not meant to remain static. Growth requires rupture. The psyche does not evolve in the absence of challenge. It matures in the presence of inner confrontation. You are not weak for feeling lost. You are not broken for being afraid. But you will remain shackled by those feelings until you face them with open eyes and a steady heart. Each morning, do not ask, "How do I feel better?" Ask instead, "What truth am I finally ready to see?" That question alone can begin to change everything. In moments of struggle, when clarity seems distant and the heart grows heavy with questions, the first instinct is often to look outward. We search for voices louder than our own, for advice, for steps, for solutions someone else has already mapped out. We are told to be positive, to stay busy, to move forward. But forward toward what? Toward more noise? Toward someone else's dream? The truth is, the more we reach outward in desperation, the more distant we grow from the one place where real answers live, within. There is a quiet center inside every person, a place beyond the opinions, beyond the fear, beyond the persona. We show the world, That place is not found through noise. It reveals itself only in silence. And yet, silence frightens us. We confuse stillness with stagnation, solitude with loneliness, and reflection with weakness. But in reality, stillness is not where nothing happens. It is where everything begins. To truly change, to truly know who you are and what you need, you must turn inward. The world around you will always be full of distractions and temptations. Notifications, deadlines, news cycles, opinions, they clamor for your attention. But no external voice can tell you what your soul already knows. You must learn to sit with yourself, to hear what has been waiting patiently underneath the surface of your daily life. There was once a woman who had battled depression for years. She had tried therapy, medication, endless advice from well-meaning friends. And still, the heaviness lingered. One evening, she wandered into a quiet park. She turned off her phone, sat beneath a tree, and for the first time in months, said, nothing. She simply listened to the rustling of leaves, to the rhythm of her breath, to the ache inside her chest. And then it came, not a solution, but a realization. I'm not broken, she whispered to herself. I'm just buried. It was not a cure, but it was a beginning, a turning point, because she had finally met herself beneath the surface of her pain. The mind has been trained to seek answers in the outer world, but the heart remembers what the mind forgets. That truth rises from within. Journaling, walking alone in nature, even sitting silently with a cup of tea before the world wakes up. These are not escapes. They are returns. They are sacred spaces where your intuition, your inner compass, your oldest wisdom can rise like mist off a still lake. You are not lost when you feel uncertain. You are being invited to return to what has been neglected. Your inner voice is not small. It is simply soft. It will never shout above the noise. It waits until you are ready to listen. So begin each morning not with reaction, but with remembrance. Before you step into the world, go first to the place where you are already whole, not to fix yourself, but to find yourself. When hardship arrives, as it inevitably does in every human life, the mind often leaps to catastrophic conclusions. It begins spinning tales of doom and permanence. This is the end. I will never get through this. Everything is against me. These stories become so convincing, so emotionally charged, that we begin to mistake them for truth. But they are not truth. They are interpretations, reflections of fear, not reality. And like all interpretations, they can be questioned, reshaped, rewritten. The psyche is not a passive mirror. It is a storyteller. It takes raw experience and weaves it into meaning. But if you do not consciously author the story you are living, your fear will do it for you. And fear is a cruel narrator. It highlights failure, it omits growth, it magnifies what went wrong, and silences the subtle strength you showed just by surviving another day. To reclaim your power, you must take back the pen. You must challenge the script that tells you you're broken, cursed, or defeated. In the depth of suffering, this feels nearly impossible. But that is exactly where reframing begins. It begins not by denying the pain, but by daring to look at it through a different lens. Ask yourself, what if this is not the end, but a turning point? What if this pain is not a punishment, but a preparation? These are not empty affirmations, they are doorways. They open your mind to the possibility that something in you is being asked to evolve, to rise, to become. Consider the story of a man who lost everything in a single year: his job, his marriage, his health. He spiraled into despair, convinced life had singled him out for suffering. But one morning, he remembered the words of a mentor. The worst moments are not the end of you. They are the end of who you used to be. Slowly, he began to ask a different question, not why me, but what is this asking of me? In time, he rebuilt, not the same life, but a more honest one. He found a career that aligned with his values. He opened himself to love that didn't demand he shrink. He began to live, not for the story he once believed, but for the one he was now creating. Psychologists have long known that perception shapes reality. The frame around the Eingabe picture determines what the mind focuses on. Viktor Frankl, who survived the unthinkable horror of the concentration camps, said it plainly. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the freedom to choose one's attitude. Even in suffering, meaning is possible. Even in darkness, light can be found, not outside, but in the way we choose to see. You are not powerless in the face of hardship. You are the author. The events of your life are the raw material, not the final verdict. Begin again. Not because the world has changed, but because you have chosen to change the way you see it. And from that shift, a new chapter is born. When pain becomes overwhelming, it carries with it a cruel illusion that we are utterly alone, that our suffering is unique, that our darkness is too heavy to share, that no one would understand. We retreat, we shut down, we convince ourselves that silence is strength, that disappearing is easier than explaining. And in doing so, we begin to live in a kind of emotional exile. We smile to keep others comfortable. We say, "I'm fine," while drowning quietly beneath the surface. But the soul is not built to heal in isolation. It may endure there, but it does not transform there. There is a truth so simple, it is often overlooked. We are wired for connection. Not the shallow, performative kind that comes with likes or polite conversation, but the deep and soul-anchoring kind that says, "I see you, even in your mess, especially in your mess, and I'm not going anywhere." In the presence of that kind of love, the inner world begins to soften, defenses loosen, shame starts to unravel, and what once felt unbearable becomes something you can finally breathe through. Not because the pain is gone, but because you are no longer carrying it alone. A man once told the story of his battle with addiction. For years, he numbed his pain with alcohol, with lies, with silence. He convinced himself that he was beyond saving. He believed he had destroyed every meaningful connection he had. Rehab didn't move him. Advice didn't change him. But then one day, his daughter called. There was no lecture, no judgment. Just a few words. "I miss you, Dad. Please come back." That simple expression of love cracked something open inside him. Not because it fixed everything, but because it reminded him that he was still worth loving, that he was still seen, that he had not vanished entirely. You don't need 100 people to understand you. You need one. One person who listens without fixing, who stays without needing you to perform, who welcomes the truth of your story without shrinking away. And sometimes that person is a friend. Sometimes it is a stranger. Sometimes it is someone you never expected. But to find them, you must be willing to risk vulnerability, to speak the words you've kept hidden, to reach out when every instinct tells you to shut down. Love is not a cure. It does not erase your pain, but it is the thread that holds you together when you feel like you're falling apart. It reminds you of your own humanity, your own belonging. In darkness, love is not always loud or grand. It is often a quiet voice saying, "I'm here, I'm with you." That voice, that presence, has the power to anchor you when the storm rises. So if you are hurting, do not hide. Do not disappear into silence. Speak, even if your voice shakes. Even if all you can say is, "I don't want to be alone." That truth alone can become a bridge. And on the other side, someone may be waiting, already reaching back. When life feels like too much, when the weight of uncertainty, loss, or fear presses down, It's easy to believe the lie that you must first feel better before you do better. You tell yourself, I'll act when I'm ready. I'll try when I'm stronger. I'll begin when I feel clear. But clarity does not precede movement. It follows it. What paralyzes the soul is not the absence of answers, but the absence of action. When you stand still in the fog, it thickens. But even a single step begins to break it apart. The overwhelmed mind craves escape. It looks for the perfect solution, the breakthrough moment, the magical shift where everything suddenly makes sense. But that moment rarely comes in the way you expect. Healing is not grand. Growth is not dramatic. They are quiet, repetitive, humble things. They begin not with a bold leap, but with a single imperfect step. That is where the soul begins to remember its power. There's an old proverb, when the heart is heavy, let the hands do the work. Because when your heart breaks, your mind races. It imagines worst-case scenarios. It feeds you despair. But your hands, they can anchor you. They can do something real. You can clean a corner of your room. You can wash your face. You can write a few honest words in a journal. These acts may seem small, even pointless, but they are seeds, and seeds become roots, and roots become trees. A young man, once paralyzed by depression, told the story of how his healing began. Not with therapy, not with medicine, but with making his bed. That was it. Every morning, for weeks, it was the only thing he could manage. But it gave him a taste of order, a flicker of control, and from that single habit, others slowly emerged. He started walking to the end of the street, then around the block, then eventually back into life. What changed him wasn't a moment of inspiration. It was the quiet rhythm of small, consistent acts. Behavioral psychology confirms what ancient wisdom has long known. Momentum builds belief. Every small action teaches your nervous system something profound. I am not helpless. Each time you choose to move, even when you don't feel like it, your brain rewires itself ever so slightly toward hope. Like a snowball gathering mass, the smallest motion picks up speed, and over time, it becomes unstoppable. The mind may argue, this is not enough, but the soul knows better. The soul knows that enough is a myth. That action is what matters. That movement, no matter how tiny, is sacred. So do not wait for motivation to arrive. Do not wait for your thoughts to clear, or your fear to vanish. Begin with one small thing. Do it today. Do it again tomorrow. Let the rhythm carry you forward. And soon, you will look back and realize you didn't just survive. You changed. One small act at a time. These first 5 steps are not just strategies. They are soul disciplines. To face, to listen, to rewrite, to connect, to act. In the depths of hardship, you are not being punished. You are being invited to strip away illusions, to meet your authentic self, to rise from the ashes not as who you were, but as who you truly are. The dark is not the enemy. It is the womb of rebirth. And so, begin. The path won't be easy, but it will be yours. And that is enough.